Prohibited Elegance by Shimon Prologue. The rain lashed against the polished windows of Sinclair Manor, each drop echoing the heavy silence that hung in the opulent air. Lady Laelani Sinclair stood by the grand window, her heart drumming a restless beat against her ribcage. Beyond the threshold of her gilded prison lay a world she was no longer able to navigate, bound by the chains of expectation and loyalty to a husband who retained power through fear. In the shadows of the manor, a new figure watched her with keen eyes, Desmond Carver, the newly appointed butler, whose presence stirred something intense and wild within her. She felt it, a pull that whispered promises of passion and danger. What she didn't know was that behind Desmond's charming demeanor lay a truth more perilous than her desires could fathom. As thunder cracked violently overhead, so too did the foundations of her carefully constructed life begin to tremble, heralding a storm far greater than the tempest outside. Scene 1. A grieving heart. The golden rays of the afternoon sun spilled through the grand windows of Sinclair Manor, casting intricate patterns on the polished marble floor. Lady Laelani Sinclair stood in the opulent hallway, her fingers gently tracing the ornate mouldings that framed the space. The hushed whispers of her house staff fluttered through the air like autumn leaves, creating an undercurrent of muted conversations. "Why must we linger in this house of shadows?" Laelani protested to her chattering companions, Amelia and Marcus, two long-standing friends who had seen her laughter and her tears. "Every corner holds a memory, and the weight of it suffocates me. Perhaps the past has a way of haunting us until we choose to face it," Amelia replied, her voice steady yet sympathetic. She adjusted the deep crimson velvet shawl draped around her shoulders, the fabric contrasting against the pale hues of Laelani's mourning attire. "You cannot escape what she meant to you. Your aunt's spirit still lingers in this place." "Or perhaps it's a prison," Laelani snapped, frustration bubbling to the surface as she whirled around, her dark curls bouncing with the movement. "Every memory feels like a gilded cage, trapping me in a life I do not want. I must break free from this charade." "Maybe a change would help," Marcus suggested gently, both hands shoved deep into the pockets of his tailored trousers. The dark fabric fit him well, suggesting a care for appearances that starkly contrasted Laelani's growing disheveled state. "A trip to the coast? A moment by the sea might—" "I will not run away," she interrupted, her voice sharp yet laced with vulnerability. "I respect her too much for that. But this life—" She waved her hand as if shooing away bees, helpless against the buzz of her emotions. "I feel like I'm suffocating under all this opulence." The silent weight of her words hung in the air. Suddenly, a soft knock at the door broke the tension. "Enter," Laelani called, her voice regaining some composure. Desmond Carver stepped into the room, his presence emanating a quiet authority. The sight of him brought a momentary stillness, as if he was a breath of fresh air against the suffocating fabric of their conversation. "My lady, your husband requests your presence in the library." At the mention of her husband, Laelani's heart sank. "It's hardly a request if it's a demand," she muttered under her breath, but Desmond's keen eyes met hers, a flicker of understanding passing between them. "I cannot bear to sit in that room any longer," she confessed, her strength wavering. "All I see are the secrets hidden behind the library shelves. The shadows there, they seem to mock me." Desmond stepped closer, his voice low yet deeply resonant. "You do not have to face your burdens alone. There is strength in sharing, my lady." "Secrecy breeds shadows," Amelia interjected, a playful glint in her eyes to lighten the weight they shared. "And here we thought this was a house of elegance." Desmond chuckled softly, a sound like gravel wrapped in warmth. "More like a tangled web, it seems. Just as much beauty as it is a battleground." "Not to mention the uninvited guests," Marcus added, crossing his arms as if guarding against some unseen threat. "Laelani, your husband's people have been known to draw attention. Perhaps it would be wise to—" "Enough!" Laelani exclaimed, her voice breaking with a depth of emotion that startled them all. "Why must I always be caught in the conflict between loyalty and freedom? I'm tired of secrets, tired." Her eyes met Desmond's, and the world around them faded. In that moment, an electric connection sparked, something unnameable yet undeniable. Desmond's gaze softened, and a hint of something unspoken passed between them, a shared recognition of their hidden struggles and desires. "It's not your burden to bear alone," he murmured, his voice enveloping her like a warm embrace. Laelani blinked, breaking the spell, but the warmth lingered. "We all carry our masks and cages," she said softly, "yet sometimes we forget our own hearts amidst the echoes." At that, Amelia and Marcus exchanged glances. Laelani clasped her hands together, her pulse racing as she grasped back onto her composure. "Perhaps today I will choose to leave my masks behind." "Let today be a beginning," Desmond suggested, his voice low but filled with purpose. A flicker of determination sparked in Laelani's eyes. "Then let's begin to unravel this tangled web." As the weight of possibilities swirled in the air, she felt a new strength rising within her. Despite the shadows of the past, there was still light waiting to break through. Scene 2. The butler's introduction. The grand foyer of Sinclair Manor echoed with a silence that felt almost suffocating. The polished marble floor glimmered beneath the soft, golden light of a crystal chandelier, casting flickers of illumination onto the ornately painted walls. Laelani Sinclair, standing at the large arched window, gazed outside, her mind heavy with the weight of expectation. It was a late afternoon, the sky gradually veiling itself in the golden hues of dusk, bringing darkness that seemed to seep into her very being. The recent loss of her beloved aunt left her feeling adrift in a sea of flamboyant laces and rigid social engagements. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps, deliberate and confident. Desmond Carver entered the foyer, a vision of poise in a tailored black suit that accentuated his tall, athletic frame. The way he held his head high and moved with effortless grace immediately commanded attention. With each measured step, the air shifted around him, and even the portraits lining the walls seemed to lean closer, eager to catch a glimpse of the newcomer. "Lady Sinclair," Desmond said, his voice a rich, low timbre that curled around her names like silk. Laelani turned, their eyes locking for the first time. An electric charge surged between them, something inexplicable and raw. She felt her breath hitch as she noted the intensity in his dark brown eyes. He was not just her new butler, he was an enigma threaded with mischief and depth, qualities she hadn't realized she craved in her life of routine and opulence. "What time does the household need me to begin?" he asked, his gaze unwavering, gauging her reaction. "I believe dinner is served at 7, she replied, trying to maintain a composed facade, even as her heart drummed audibly in her ears. "I trust you have experience." "With fine dining and discerning guests, yes," he interrupted smoothly, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his lips. "But I adapt quickly to any family's quirks and nuances." He stepped closer, and Laelani could feel the warmth radiating from him, almost tangible in how it enveloped her. She hadn't expected this handsome stranger to be so charismatic, his presence drawing all the air from the room. The tropical scent of sandalwood lingered in the space between them, igniting her senses in ways she hadn't anticipated. Their moment was interrupted as her sister, Felicity, bounding into the foyer like a breeze, her vibrant personality filling the empty corners of the room. "Desmond, is it? Welcome. I hope you know how to handle a lively crowd." She nudged Laelani playfully. "Because the soirees we attend can be quite exhausting." "You have no idea," Desmond quipped, a glint of mischief in his eyes. Before Laelani could respond, Felicity whisked him into a quick conversation about the upcoming gala and the peculiarities of their family friends. As they spoke, Laelani glanced past them, her gaze drifting momentarily to the sprawling gardens. A sudden thought gripped her. What if she took Desmond out there, away from the pomp of the manor, into a space where they could talk without convention? A restless ache had settled deep in her chest, an urge to shatter the confines of her existence that had become as stifling as the corset she wore. But Felicity's laughter filled the air again as she declared, "You'll fit in just fine, Desmond. Just remember, if you don't laugh at our mother's dreadful jokes, she'll insist on getting out her scrapbook of embarrassing moments from our youth." "Promise to laugh through the tears of suffering," Desmond replied, his eyes still flickering to Laelani, who found herself unable to look away. The connection was palpable, a silent acknowledgement that went deeper than her banter with her sister. Just then, the door creaked open, revealing Arthur Sinclair, Laelani's imposing husband, whose very presence exuded a power and dominance that put all in attendance on edge. His gaze swept over the three of them, darkness lurking behind his sharp features. "What's this? A welcoming party?" His tone was biting, but his eyes flickered over Desmond with a shadow of disdain. "Just getting acquainted," Laelani replied, her voice steady despite the tension coiling in her stomach. "Desmond is our new butler." Arthur's smirk revealed nothing as he scrutinized Desmond. "Let me remind you that loyalty is highly valued in this household." The air thickened as Laelani's heart raced. Desmond straightened, a quiet confidence radiating from him. "I assure you of my dedication, sir." Arthur stepped forward, the challenge simmering between them. "Then we shall see if you have what it takes to handle our little chaos." The challenge hung heavy in the room, leaving everyone momentarily suspended. Yet for Laelani, it ignited a spark within her, a quiet yearning for danger and uncharted pathways, illuminated by that simple gaze exchanged with Desmond. As Arthur turned to leave, the thrum of an impending storm lingered in the air, and Laelani whispered to Desmond, just loud enough for only him to hear, "You might just be the chaos I've been waiting for." Scene 3. A stolen glance. The afternoon sun poured over the estate like liquid gold, bathing the rose garden in a warm glow. The air was thick with the heady scent of blooming petals, a sweet, intoxicating perfume that mingled with the faint whisper of the breeze. Laelani Sinclair knelt beside a patch of vibrant dahlias, her fingers absorbing the cool, damp earth, inscribed by the shadows of their lush green leaves. This sanctuary had always been her escape, a fortress woven from colors and fragrances, but today it felt more like a stage for her silently building restlessness. The painted sky reflected her internal conflict. An enormous white cloud drifted lazily above, momentarily blocking the sun, as if sensing her yearning for something or someone beyond the gilded cage of her life. With every soft rustle of the leaves, she felt a pull in her chest, a gentle reminder of the freedom she had once desired. Suddenly, with a playful flirt of the wind, Desmond Carver made his entrance into her reverie, a spectre in polished black. She looked up, caught unawares by the sight of him, his impressive stature framed against the backdrop of the garden. He seemed to carry the sunlight with him, brightening even the darkest corners of her mind. "Lady Laelani," he began, his tone light yet rich, "the dahlias are practically begging for admiration. One could think them modest, hiding behind such a facade of elegance." She quirked a brow, a teasing smirk curving her lips. "Is that so? You wouldn't dare say anything less about your own reflection, would you, Desmond?" He laughed, a warm, golden-barreled sound that hung in the air between them, disarming as it travelled. "Ah, but the dahlias don't require my constant attention, unlike some." His eyes sparkled with mischief, the corners of his mouth dancing every bit as inviting as the petals around them. For a fleeting moment, the world around them melted away. A flutter of electricity surged through Laelani, electrifying her skin in ways she had almost forgotten. She could feel the heat of his gaze, heavy and bright, resting on her as if she were the only flower in bloom. "Don't let me distract you, my lady," he said, feigning dramatic dismissal as he turned, creating space where seconds before their chemistry had hummed palpably. Yet she found herself standing, the distance between them distorting mere air into something dense and charged. "Desmond." Before she could form the words, a voice broke the moment. Gavin Sinclair, Laelani's husband, materialized like a storm cloud, an unwelcome chill replacing the warmth of Desmond's smile. His presence seemed to suck the color from the garden, a stark contrast to the vivid blooms. "Laelani, you should not waste the day idling about. There are matters to attend to, and I need you at my side." His tone was curt, dismissive, and he gestured toward the sprawling estate beyond them, unaware of the connections he had just severed. Desmond's posture stiffened, his dark eyes narrowing as he assessed the intruder. He offered no greetings, but stepped deliberately to the side, a silent sentinel against the encroaching storm of tension. The essence of their burgeoning bond crackled in the air as Laelani felt torn between duty and desire. "Yes, of course, Gavin," she replied, though every syllable wobbled unconvincingly. "I'll be with you shortly." Gavin, satisfied, turned to leave, but cast a lingering glance at Desmond, the unspoken warning heavy in the air. "See that my wife doesn't stray too far from her responsibilities," he added, each word a veiled threat that zipped between them. As he retreated, Desmond turned to Laelani, his expression unreadable, a sudden storm of emotions swirling underneath his calm demeanor. "Is that the way to speak to your husband? He seems to think you are a prize to be kept on a shelf." Laelani felt a seed of anger blossom within her, mixed with frustration. "He has no idea who I am, the woman I want to be," she said, her voice rising with indignation. "His vision is clouded by power and expectation." Desmond stepped closer, eyes locking with hers, electric and potent. "Then what will you do, Laelani? Because the flowers around you, I can feel their desire for freedom, echoing the one in your heart." She inhaled sharply, the tension palpable, a weapon honing on its target, as the sun burst free from the clouds. The vibrant petals danced in the renewed warmth, a physical manifestation of everything she denied. "Perhaps," her voice was lower now, confident and reverberating, "perhaps it's time for me to stand up. For both of us." As if on cue, the sweet scents of the garden collided, murmuring promises of blossoming defiance, the stakes rising with every passing moment. Laelani's heart quickened with an unfamiliar thrill. Was it courage? Or was it simply the burgeoning love tethered to the man standing before her? "Then let's be bold, shall we?" Desmond whispered, his breath warm as they stood on the precipice of uncertainty together, shadows of their choices looming in the air, yet emboldened by the spark that had just ignited. Scene 4. Lingering moments. The Grand Library, with its towering shelves of leather-bound volumes, embraced Laelani Sinclair like an old friend. The late afternoon light filtered through the tall arched windows, casting striped patterns across the polished walnut floor. Dust motes danced in the golden rays, heavy with the scent of aged paper and polished wood. Laelani stood by the roaring fireplace, the flickering flames illuminating her deep brown eyes, reflecting a world of thoughts and emotions, now blending into a canvas of longing. Desmond Carver quietly entered, the soft rustle of his tailored coat, barely audible over the crackle of firewood. She felt his presence before she saw him, an electric current that thrummed between them. He approached her with a grace that belied his role, moving with the purpose and stealth of a man who held secrets like weapons. "What are you reading?" Desmond asked, the hint of his warm, rich voice wrapping around her like a blanket. Laelani turned the book in his direction, the cover embossed with delicate golden scrollwork. "A collection of poems by Lord Byron," she replied, her lips curving into a smile. "He captures the kind of passion that seems almost forbidden. Can you imagine what it must have felt like to love so fiercely?" She peered into his eyes. They sparkled with suppressed thoughts, longing, perhaps, or understanding. "I would hope to never diminish such love with neglect," he murmured, stepping closer, the weight of those words settling between them. Outside, the wind howled against the walls, a tempest mirroring the turmoil within Laelani's heart. She could hear the faint tapping of rain on the glass, a steady rhythm that felt almost like a heartbeat, thumping in tandem with her racing pulse. "You know, Desmond," she said, folding the page down and tossing the book onto the cushioned chair nearby, unconcerned about its safety. "I've become quite good at having thoughts that never leave my mind. I think it was not the marriage that suffocated me, but the expectations that came with it." "Expectations can carve our lives into shapes we were never meant to fit," he replied, his voice low, a mix of sympathy and resolve. He stepped to the side, placing his hand gently against the shelf, as if supporting the weight of her confessions. "Freedom doesn't come without a cost, but sometimes the risk is worth the reward." The charged silence spoke volumes. Laelani found herself leaning toward him, caught in the gravitational pull that had been building since their first encounter. "What would it mean," she asked breathlessly, "for one to break free from those binds?" "In literature, it often leads to sacrifice," he said, barely responding, eyes glimmering with uncertainty. "In life, it might lead to consequences far more tangible." Just then, their moments slipped into grey chaos, as a loud commotion resounded from the other side of the door. Voices rose, filled with sharp words and harsher tones. Her husband's laughter, confident and commanding, cut through the air, followed by the urgent chatter of several house staff. They were plotting something, and her heart dropped into her stomach. Desmond's brow furrowed, his instincts kicking in. "Stay," he began, his voice urgent, but she was pulled away by her curiosity. Laelani hesitated, torn. She was an impeccable lady in a gilded cage, yet the wildness in her soul screamed for her to let go and embrace the adventure. What if it's something dangerous? What if? Come here, he interrupted, gently pulling her aside, their bodies nearly brushing together as he pushed her behind the heavy drapes, swallowing her gasps. We must hear them out first. The rich scent of wood and wool enveloped them, intimate, close. The frantic whispers filtered through, dripping with the kind of betrayal that sent shivers down her spine. As they pressed closer, her heart raced in unison with Desmond's quiet breaths. The warmth radiating between them shifted, turning electric. Their eyes locked, and something ignited, a spark drawn from the depths of despair and intensity. They stood frozen, suspended, the world beyond blurred into insignificance. "Desmond," she whispered, her voice trembling with a longing she could no longer ignore. "No," he breathed, remorse skittering across his handsome features. But even as he said it, he leaned in hesitantly, every inch of him vibrating with tension. And just like that, the library around them melted away as their lips met softly at first, a gentle exploration that unleashed a tide of emotions. Breathless, a kaleidoscope of unspoken desires surged between them as Laelani leaned into the kiss, giving in to the undeniable pull. But the sound of thunder broke the spell, reminding them of the reality lurking just beyond those walls, a storm brewing outside, preparing to crash in upon their blissful moment. They pulled back slightly, light and lingering, eyes locked in a shared acknowledgement of the chaos to come. Laelani whispered, "What if this is our only chance?" Desmond held her gaze, a fusion of hope and fear swirling in his deep brown eyes. "Then we shall take it." Scene 5. A dangerous revelation. In the opulent drawing room of Sinclair Manor, the air buzzed with a mix of warmth from the flickering fire and the muted whispers of an impending storm outside. Laelani Sinclair stood by the grand window, sunlight spilling through the panes, illuminating motes of dust dancing like forgotten dreams in her perfectly arranged world. She smoothed the silk of her gown, her fingers lingering over the delicate lace collar, both beautiful and suffocating. The laughter of her friends echoed from the parlor, weaving a stark contrast to her unrest. Desmond Carver entered quietly, a shadow among the vivid hues of the room. He carried a silver tray with a decanter of amber liquid and 2 crystal glasses, his posture dignified yet relaxed. "Miss Sinclair," he said with a faint, enigmatic smile that stirred something heavy within her, "shall we elevate the afternoon?" She turned, feigning buoyancy. "What's the occasion, Desmond? Merely the sun coming out to play?" An occasion indeed, though perhaps one of subtle harmonies rather than grand gestures. He poured the liquor, the rich aroma enveloping them as he offered her a glass, their fingers brushing ever so slightly. Laelani took a sip, the warmth cascading down her throat, igniting an unfamiliar fire in her chest. "Your ability to find pleasure in the mundane never fails to puzzle me." Desmond leaned against the mantel, his gaze unwavering. "It's not about the act, it's what we bring to it." There was an intensity in his tone that momentarily silenced the tumult of her thoughts. She felt the walls closing in on her, a space meant for laughter, now felt like a confining cage. She took another sip, glancing toward the parlor where her guests chatted animatedly. But her heart was drawn back to Desmond, whose dark eyes, so full of depth, held a secret. Unable to resist, she stepped closer, lowered her voice. "You seem to carry a weight today. Something you wish to share?" His eyes flickered with something unreadable. Sometimes, the weight grows heavy with silence. Before she could respond, he reached into his waistcoat pocket and withdrew a folded piece of paper, the corners slightly tattered. He hesitated, attention darting to the door as if entrusting the room to its shadows. "Desmond, what is that?" she asked, heart racing, sensing the gravity of the moment. "Open it when you're alone," he urged, pressing the note into her palm before turning away abruptly, the sudden distance like a chill in the air. "You deserve to know the truth." As he stepped back, the door creaked open, and their close friend Marissa brushed in, a burst of sunshine interrupting the storm. "Laelani, you have to see this." "See what?" Laelani's voice trembled, her attention flickering back to the note. "Gerald has unveiled a new portrait of you for our charity event. It's divine," Marissa chirped, oblivious to the electric charge lingering in the air. Desmond's eyes narrowed, protective. Might we save it for later, Miss Fairchild? Marissa blinked, startled by the urgency in his tone. As you wish, Desmond. But you're not escaping the next painting session, dear friend. Never could I. He managed a brief smile, but it was Laelani's moment that ripped apart the facade. In her hand, she clutched the note, unspoken chaos brewing inside her as reality clawed at the edges of her controlled existence. Once Marissa rushed to gather other friends in the adjoining room, Laelani was alone, the sudden absence of chatter weighing heavily. She unfolded the note, her breath hitching at the delicate strokes of ink spelling out treachery, the undeniable connection to her husband's nefarious dealings linked to a crime syndicate. Desmond, she whispered, heart racing, the revelation unraveling everything she thought she knew. Moments later, Desmond returned to collect more glasses, discarding the pretense of distance. He noticed her ashen face and quickly approached. What did you discover? Your weight has become my nightmare, she breathed, voice trembling with an intoxicating mix of fear and disbelief. Is this true? His expression softened, an unexpected vulnerability illuminating his features. You are the only truth I have ever wanted, Laelani. We must navigate these waters carefully. She searched his face for solace, but it was laden with resolve. Then we must choose wisely. I cannot. There are lives at stake. Their eyes locked, breaths mingling in explosive vulnerability, as the silence pulsed with rhythm, their emotions swirling within the confines of an uncertain future. But do we dare take the plunge? Desmond murmured, uncertainty echoing in his voice. They stood on the cusp of revelation, the world around them falling away as they faced the tide of choices that could drown them or set them free. Scene 6. Whispers in the night. The moon hung low in the sky, casting silvery trails across the manicured hedges of the Sinclair estate. The scent of jasmine drifted through the night air, sweet yet layered with a hint of something more brittle, a reminder of the world beyond this garden's lush embrace. Laelani Sinclair, draped in a gown of deep emerald silk that shimmered with her every step, moved quietly through the shadows. The soft crunch of gravel underfoot punctuated the stillness, a stark contrast to the tumult inside her heart. As she arrived at their secret meeting spot, an ornate wrought-iron bench nestled beneath a flowering arbor, she traced her fingers along its cold, intricate curls, grounding herself before Desmond arrived. Her breath caught at the thought of him, his presence electrifying, a stark reminder of the chaos swirling around them. Tonight, they were to discuss the note that had jolted her world, a simple piece of paper with a sinister message. Desmond appeared, his silhouette framed by the vibrant glow of the moonlight, sharp and striking. He approached with a quiet intensity, a storm contained within a calm exterior. The way he carried himself expressed confidence tempered by a guarded heart, a man who balanced duty and desire with painful precision. "Are you certain this is wise?" he murmured, his voice low and rich, reverberating with urgency as he slipped into the shadows beside her. Laelani felt her pulse quicken. She caught his gaze, a searing blue that seemed to pierce through the night, capturing the complexities of unspoken fears. "It matters not what is wise, only what we must confront," she replied, her voice steady despite the tremor of vulnerability beneath it. Laelani turned away from him, her eyes drawn to the stars twinkling like distant promises overhead. "The note. It demands action. We cannot ignore the implications." Desmond's jaw clenched at the mention of the note, and he shifted closer, his arm brushing against hers, igniting the air between them with a shared warmth. "And what if confronting it puts you in danger, your husband's connections?" "He does not own me," Laelani interrupted, the fire in her voice surprising them both. She felt a thrill in the declaration, fueled by the growing tension around them. "I am not a prize to be won or lost." "No," he replied, his eyes narrowing slightly in contemplation. "You are far more than that." There was a pause, charged with unarticulated longing, before he continued. "But every choice bears consequences." Laelani was not just battling against societal expectations, but the fire ignited by Desmond's presence. The chemistry that electrified her made every hesitation laden with desire. She turned fully to him, her heart racing. "And what if the consequence is worth it? What if I choose this? Choose you?" He leaned closer, hesitating as if waiting for a cue from her body, his breath a whisper against her skin, igniting sparks of passion that danced along the periphery of her consciousness. "Do you truly understand what you are saying?" She allowed herself to drink in the strength of his presence, his brow furrowed slightly in thought, the vulnerability of his intense gaze mingling with fierce determination. "Yes," Laelani breathed. "I do." Desmond's resolve softened the moment she cast aside her fears, daring to bridge the gap that felt as vast as the night sky. "You realize we risk everything," he said, his voice gravelly with something deeper than mere caution. "I am tired of living in shadows." Laelani took a small step forward, emboldened by the honesty beating in her chest. "I need to know what it feels like, what it means to be free." There was a heavy silence that engulfed them, fraught with longing and uncertainty. Desmond looked at her for a long moment, then finally, against the backdrop of rustling leaves whispering secrets of their own, he took her hand in his grip warm and reassuring. "Then let us discover that together, starting now." And just like that, the night thickened with their unspoken promise, their desires woven into the very fabric of the night. Scene 7. Facing the past. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the opulent drawing room of Sinclair Manor. The air was thick with the scent of freshly bloomed roses, their perfume mingling uncomfortably with the tension that hung in the space. Rich fabrics adorned the furniture, but Laelani Sinclair couldn't shake the feeling of being trapped in this gilded cage. She stood by the window, staring at the sprawling estate, searching for something beyond the manicured gardens, some flicker of freedom that felt perpetually out of reach. "Darling, are you with us?" Alaric Sinclair's voice broke through her reverie, sharp and punctuated, as he advanced into the room like a looming storm. He wore dark, tailored clothing, the sharp lines reflecting his uncompromising nature. With a hint of irritation accentuating his brow, he caught sight of Laelani's distant gaze. "Of course, dear," Laelani replied, her voice steady but her insides twisted like a coiled spring. "Just admiring the view." "Or avoiding conversation," Alaric replied, his tone laced with condescension as he stepped closer, the weight of unspoken questions between them palpable. "I've noticed you've been different lately, more withdrawn. Is something troubling you?" She took a breath, the warmth of his gaze both familiar and sinister. "It's nothing, really, just all the memories of late." Laelani forced a smile, but it faltered under Alaric's unwavering scrutiny. He could sense there was more beneath the surface, and the way he observed her made her feel like a specimen under a microscope. "Memories?" Alaric repeated, an edge to his voice. "Or perhaps you found some new distraction? Is it that insufferable new butler of ours?" Suspicion burned in his words, a spark igniting fear in Laelani's heart. Desmond Carver had become the unexpected sunrise in her life, illuminating the shadows Alaric had cast. She couldn't let that light extinguish. "Desmond is a professional," she said coolly, turning to face him, "and I certainly wouldn't let my feelings interfere with the household's operations." "Feelings again?" Alaric scoffed, crossing his arms as if warding off the charge of her honesty. "Do not underestimate how well I read between the lines. If you're lying to me, Laelani, we may have a problem." Each word struck like a whip, unearthing her deepest anxieties. Laelani's heart raced. She had not asked for this confrontation, for their seemingly perfect marriage to become riddled with suspicion. With an unruly surge of emotion compelling her, she stepped closer, the air between them charged. "Do you ever stop to think why I feel this way?" Her voice softened, revealing a vulnerability even she hadn't anticipated. "Perhaps it's because I'm being suffocated by your constant need for control." Alaric's brow furrowed, conflicted. Yet there it was, a flicker of realization behind the cold veneer, but he swiftly masked it with a hardened expression. "You think I control you? I merely protect what is mine." "Protect or imprison?" Laelani's voice trembled, the honesty tearing through the pretense. The walls of their home felt like bars, and the isolation enveloped her like a shroud. His gaze dropped, conflicted, and in that fraught silence, the tension hung thick, an unbroken strand weaving their unsaid truths. Laelani felt the distance between them grow, the gap drawn not by physical space but by emotional barbed wire. Then, unexpectedly, she stepped forward. In mere breath, the shift felt alive with electricity. Alaric, caught off guard, looked down at her, the conflict in his eyes giving way to something more primal. Laelani raised her hand tentatively, brushing it against his jaw, a delicate touch laden with unacknowledged history. "Sometimes, Alaric, I question if the chains we wear are made of gold or iron," she whispered, her voice an intimate caress that split the air. And in that breath, time slipped as he leaned closer, their lips almost grazing, igniting a tempest of contradiction. Something raw, aching, and painfully beautiful surged between them, suspended in a moment of desire and desperation. Laelani could feel his heartbeat quicken, resonating through the space like a drumming storm. But before their lips could meet, a knock interrupted the silence, shattering their fragile tension. Both stepped back abruptly, breaking the spell. Laelani caught her breath, wishing to grasp the fleeting intimacy that had slipped away like sand through her fingers. "Enter," Alaric called, his voice sharp, instantly regaining control of the room. As the door opened, Laelani caught a final glimpse of something profound in Alaric's eyes, an acknowledgement of both longing and resentment. Whatever wall had been weathered between them was still laced with regret, complex layers of desire that continued to tread dangerous ground. In that moment, Laelani realized that the past was not just a spectre haunting her, it had become a living force that demanded attention. And perhaps, amidst the chaos of her tumultuous heart, she had only just begun to face its shadow. Innate. In the butler's arms. The luxurious scents of polished mahogany and fresh linen swirled around Laelani as she stumbled into the dimly lit library, her stomach twisted into knots from the confrontation she had just endured. Her heart thudded, a mix of frustration and yearning, as she braced against the wall, feeling the cool surface beneath her fingertips, grounding her amid an emotional tempest. Desmond had been waiting, half hidden in the shadows. The depth of his presence, accentuated by the golden hues from the flickering fire, sent a shiver racing down her spine. She felt his eyes on her, a weight that tugged at her unsettling thoughts like an unspoken promise. "Lady Laelani," he murmured, his voice a soft rumble that made her pulse quicken, "what troubles you?" She closed her eyes for a fleeting moment, attempting to steady her breath. It's nothing," she replied, though it felt like a lie sticky on her tongue. The memory of her husband's careless words still echoed in her mind, each syllable like a stone tossed into turbulent waters. The tension lay thick as Desmond stepped closer, his hand brushing against the edge of her arm, a deliberate touch that sent heat radiating through her. The world around them faded, blurring the lines of duty and desire. Laelani turned to face him fully, his deep, soulful gaze searching hers with an intensity that ignited something wild within her. "Nothing can remain unspoken between us, not anymore," he insisted, his fingers grazing her skin as though causing her to awaken from a dream. "You deserve to be free, to feel as alive as you truly are." Desmond's words hung in the air, a daring defiance against the chains of her societal obligations. She clenched her jaw, tempestuous emotions coiling tightly within her. "And what of you?" she challenged, her voice barely above a whisper. "You." Her breath hitched. "You're a butler. You can't afford to be involved in this." His laughter held a trace of bitterness, a stark contrast to their alluring tension. "I stand here every day, watching you suffocate behind closed doors. What do you truly want, Laelani?" At that moment, the storm of emotions broke, and she found herself stepping forward and closing the gap between them. "I need," she faltered, unable to articulate the abyss of longing that threatened to consume her. In one fluid motion, Desmond gathered her into his arms, enveloping her in the warmth of his presence. "Then say it," he urged, lowering his voice, his breath feathering against her ear. The sensation ignited a warmth within her, pushing her senses to the brink. Before she could reply, a crash resounded from the hallway, followed by raised voices, one unmistakably belonging to her husband. Desmond's grip on her tightened protectively, drawing her deeper into the shelter of his embrace. "We'll face it together," he murmured against the chaos outside. The urgency in the air escalated, but the world vanished in the safe cocoon of his arms. Laelani dared to lift her head, their faces inches apart, her breaths mingling with his. Every flicker of uncertainty trembled in the space between them, thick with uncharted territory and rightful rebellion. Suddenly, realizing the precariousness of their situation, her heart raced, not with fear but exhilaration, as a stray thought crossed her mind. If only they could remain in this perfect defiance against the world, she might find the courage to give in completely. "Desmond," she breathed, her voice tinged with both fervor and fragility. "Maybe I don't know how to ask for what I want." His lips curled into a soft, encouraging smile, even as the sounds of heated arguments echoed like a distant storm. "You're stronger than you believe. Listen to your heart," he whispered, their foreheads touching, sending shivers through her entire body. And just as Laelani summoned the courage to voice her truth, the library door burst open, and her husband stormed in, eyes blazing, the electrifying moment skewered by reality, twisting their nascent connection into uncertainty once more. "Desmond," her husband growled, his tone betraying an underlying accusation. Laelani's heart plummeted. Here in the butler's arms, the world spun out of control. All she wanted was to stay. Scene 9. Secrets and Shadows. Desmond stood in the grand drawing room of the Sinclair estate, the faint golden light spilling from the chandelier above casting an ethereal glow across the plush furnishings. He meticulously arranged a vase of peonies on the mantel, their delicate fragrance mingling with the scent of polished mahogany. Each bloom seemed to pulse with life, a stark contrast to the simmering tension he felt coiling within. His fingers, steady yet betraying a tension of their own, grazed the soft petals, and for a fleeting moment he imagined a time when his existence felt less burdened by secrets. Laelani entered quietly, her footsteps muffled by the carpet's luxurious texture. A heavy silence settled like a shroud around them as she leaned against the doorframe, taking in the sight of him. Her dark hair fell in rich waves that caught the light, framing a face that was beautiful yet beset with worry. "They seem to thrive well," she remarked, her tone light yet threaded with an undercurrent of awareness as she gestured to the flowers, almost as if they know that beauty speaks volumes where words fail. Desmond turned slowly, the weight of her gaze anchoring him. Beauty has its place, but it can also mask deeper truths. Laelani stepped closer, the fabric of her gown whispering against itself, a muted melody of elegance that brushed against Desmond's senses. "What truth are we trying so hard to conceal?" she whispered, her voice low, as if they were sharing a dangerous secret. The air between them crackled, heavy with unspoken feelings. As moments passed, Desmond felt the unwelcome tug of vulnerability. He steeled himself, yet the warmth of her presence ignited a longing that he could no longer deny. "I've been targeted," he said abruptly, the gravity of his words hanging in the air. Confusion flickered across Laelani's face, replaced quickly by concern. "Targeted? By whom?" Desmond took a step closer, his voice a hush. "A rival believes I pose a threat to you." "What do you mean?" Laelani's expression shifted, a mix of anger and fear illuminating her features. "You've done nothing but care for me." A silence enveloped them, thick enough to feel the pulse of their heartbeats. It wasn't just his safety at risk. The very air around them began to hum with the weight of possibility. "They don't see that," Desmond replied, his gaze intent upon her. "To them, loyalty is a flicker, easily snuffed out by ambition." She reached out, her fingers brushing against the sleeve of his waistcoat, the touch electric. "Then we must not let them snuff it out. We need to stay vigilant." Desmond stood tall, almost alarmed by the intensity of her conviction. "Laelani, you must understand. My investigation into your husband's dealings has put both of us in danger. I cannot protect you if—" "And what of your safety?" she interjected, her voice rising slightly. "What if they come for you as well?" He trapped her gaze, grounding the storm swirling in her eyes. "Then we fight back. Together." The echo of those two words settled deep within her, together. It filled a void she had long tried to ignore, as if he had offered her a glimpse into a world where she could be both fierce and free. Their quiet moments surged with unexpressed emotions, the blossoming tension poised on the edge of something deeper. For a heartbeat, the weight of their realities melted away, replaced by a shared understanding and a flickering desire to break free from the chains holding them down. Laelani leaned closer, her breath warm against his skin, their boundaries almost dissolving. "Then let's not live in shadows. Not anymore." Desmond's heart raced as he moved slightly closer, their faces mere inches apart. "Life can feel insurmountable," he said, his voice a murmur charged with emotion. "Yet, with you, I feel courageous enough to face it." At that moment, The door swung open, crashing against the wall, and Mr. Sinclair stormed in, his presence shattering the fragile bond that had just begun to form. "Laelani, is everything all right here?" Caught in the tension of the moment, Desmond stepped back, retreating into the shadows, disappearing into a world of secrets once more. Scene 10. Threads of Desire. The dining room glowed softly in the flickering light of the candle sconces, casting dancing shadows on the walls lined with portraits, a parade of ancestors looking down, guardians of secrets long buried. The table, elegantly set with fine china and crystal glasses, was a backdrop for the charged atmosphere between Laelani Sinclair and Desmond Carver, her newfound butler. They sat across from each other, the rich aroma of spiced lamb and roasted vegetables mingling with the floral scent of the roses in the vase at the center. "Do you think it's possible to be truly free?" Laelani's voice was a whisper, barely piercing the comfortable silence that enveloped them. She absently traced the rim of her wineglass as she dared to look into Desmond's deep eyes, searching for an answer. "Freedom has many forms," Desmond replied, his tone calm yet layered with an intensity that made her heart quicken. "For some, it's the absence of chains. For others, it's a sense of belonging." His gaze was unwavering, unearthing questions she hadn't allowed herself to ponder until now. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. It was a fleeting moment, the softest of touches, but electricity sparked between them, igniting a warmth that spread from her fingertips to the depths of her stomach. "What do you wish for, Laelani?" he asked, his voice low, drawing her in. "I wish." Her breath caught, the vulnerability of her thoughts laid bare beneath the weight of his question. "I wish to live without the expectations of others, to embrace the wildness in my heart." Laelani leaned closer, craving the connection that flickered like the candles around them. "But every time I think I've found it, I'm pulled back by duty and fear." "Fear can be a powerful prison," Desmond mused, his thumb gently caressing the back of her hand. "But it can also be a catalyst for change." He hesitated, as if wrestling with the words that hung between them. "I fear losing what I've found with you." Laelani's breath hitched. She could feel the weight of his confession, the raw honesty of his admission seeping into the spaces between them. "What have you found?" she asked, holding her breath, daring to dream of something more. "Hope," he answered, vulnerability softening his voice, layering his tone with a sweetness that contrasted sharply with the harsh realities of their lives. "You have a light about you, Laelani, a fire that could ignite the darkest days." "Oh, Desmond." She couldn't help but smile, the idea of being seen by him sending warmth through her chest. "Is that all I am? A flickering flame waiting to be stoked?" "I see a torch," he countered, his gaze unwavering now, carving out a path shared only between them. "You could illuminate the world with your strength and spirit, even in a gilded cage." As their words flowed, they were unnoticed by the ambient world outside, a world of lavish parties and empty mirth that demanded Laelani to conform. Here, within the confines of their private dinner, time stood fateful and still. She drew closer to him, searching his eyes for confirmation of what they both felt. The shared warmth felt intoxicating, an elixir to the doubts that clouded her mind. Just then, the door swung open with a creak, shattering the moment. Lady Maeve, Laelani's sister, burst in, cheeks flushed and agitated. "Laelani, you must come at once. There's been a scene at the estate. Mother is beside herself." Desmond's hand withdrew instantly, the warmth dissipating as reality rushed back in. Laelani glanced at him, a flurry of emotions crossing her face. "What happened?" "Rumor has it, Victor is entangled with one of his business associates. Something about discrepancies in their dealings. It's a heated argument." Maeve's eyes darted between the two, oblivious to the tenderness that had just vanished. "This could escalate, and you know what our family cannot afford." Desmond stood, the stoicism returning. "I'll ensure everything is prepared for your arrival at the estate. Don't worry." His voice was steady, commanding respect in a moment that felt chaotic. Maeve nodded, oblivious to the charged tension that lingered like mist in the air. "Good. Let's hurry." As they moved toward the door, Laelani's heart raced, awareness flooding her thoughts. They were woven into a world riddled with danger and expectation, but as Desmond briefly caught her eye, she felt a silent promise pass between them. The night was still young, and the threads of desire tangled deeper, binding them to a choice that trembled at the edge of urgency. "Will you come find me?" she asked, earnest and soft. "Always," he replied, a flicker of determination in his gaze. Scene 11. The nature of loyalty. The soft candlelight flickered against the patterned wallpaper of the study, casting shadows that danced like memories in the corners of the room. Laelani Sinclair nestled into the plush velvet of the armchair, the rich burgundy fabric enveloping her like a comforting embrace, yet it could not shield her from the turmoil simmering beneath her surface. The scent of aged books mingled with the subtle hint of lavender from a vase on the desk, a false sense of tranquility as tension gripped the air between her and Desmond Carver, who stood near the window, silhouette sharp against the dim glow. Desmond sighed, a sound that seemed to resonate through the silence. He turned, his expression shifting from brooding to profound vulnerability. "You ever think about how loyalty sometimes feels like a cage?" Laelani's breath caught. "A cage? Or a choice?" She leaned forward, her emerald eyes searching his. "Isn't loyalty meant to elevate us?" His voice was a whisper, yet it carried the weight of his truth. "I used to believe that, but life, it has a way of twisting those ideals." He took a step closer, the faint rustle of his tailored suit echoing in the still room as he added, "I've seen what happens when loyalty is misplaced." "What happened to you?" Laelani asked, her tone soft but insistent. Desmond glanced away for a moment, collecting his thoughts like fragile wisps of smoke. "I lost someone I loved," he admitted, framing the memory painfully in his mind. "They trusted me, and I failed to protect them." The silence swelled again, palpable and heavy, as he allowed the memory of betrayal to settle between them. Laelani felt the weight of his words reverberate through her. "You were just a kid, Desmond. You couldn't have known." "Perhaps," he interrupted, his voice thickening with emotion.